Alrighty, friends, you're going to need to buckle up for this one because this one is a doozy. It's kind of related to what we did yesterday, but on steroids. And so we are going to kind of go through this process. And the process is going to combine a lot of things that we've learned over the years. First of all, you're going to need to factor the tops and the bottoms of your fractions, your fraction functions. And sometimes you can reduce them before you can even start the problem. So not always, so put a little question mark. You want to just check and see if you can reduce. Then this is going to be the tricky parts, the next two steps. We're going to create, if needed, like if there's not one, we're going to create or find the common denominator because we're adding and subtracting still, but we need to have a common denominator. Just like yesterday, but again, a little more challenging, we're going to need to adjust the tops or what we call the numerator. And we do that the same way we did yesterday, but it'll be built into what we're already doing. And then we also need to simplify the top then. Just like yesterday, once we got a common denominator, we do some work on the top. And so that might involve FOIL. This should be familiar, this we practiced yesterday. Then you might need to distribute, you might need to combine like terms, whatever is necessary mathematically. And then at the end, you kind of have to look critically at your answer and just see, does your answer reduce? Is there anything that you could take out, cancel out, anything like that? So we have 4 problems, but they are definitely doozies. So let's take a look. So the first thing we're supposed to do, if you're looking at the notes, is we're supposed to see if each one individually reduces at all. Here I can see that I could cancel out this x, which would cancel one of these. So my first one becomes 7 over 9x. Here I have a triangle, but I can see that there's an x in each part. The other thing you can think of it as, like it says to do in the notes to factor, these on the bottom have a GCF of 3x. And when I take it out, I get x plus 1. But now that these x's are on the outside of the parentheses, they cancel. When there's nothing left on the top, you put a 1 as a placeholder to show that there is a top. And so this is what I have going into this problem. But now I need a common denominator. So looking at the number parts, 3 and 9, the number that they will both go into is 9. Now, this x sitting here is not the same as this x plus 1. So when I go to do my common denominator, I need a plain x on the outside to accommodate this guy, but I also need an x plus 1 to accommodate this. So you're just making sure that you have enough things that all these bottom pieces are accounted for. So in this first fraction, I have the 9x part of my common denominator, but not the x plus 1. So I'm going to have to multiply that part of the top, this is the adjusting part, by x plus 1. You're adjusting it by whatever it was missing. So the 1 in the original problem is already over a 3 and an x plus 1. So in order for it to match this on the outside, I'd have to take that 3 and multiply it by another 3 and an x. So this is going to get multiplied by 3x, so the top is as well, because whatever you multiply by on the bottom, you multiply at the top to get the same thing. Now I'm going to be on the step that says to do the math on the top. That's going to be distributing the 7 and then 1 times 3x. So I'm just kind of letting the bottom stay the same. Then I combine any terms if I can. So I have 10x. Wait, what did I do? Yeah, so I'm going to have 10x plus 7 over 9x and then x plus 1. Sorry, I got a little lost there. And then you cannot cancel, even though it's super tempting, you can't cancel those x's because that 10x plus 7 is kind of one big thing. It's the 10x was not on the outside of a parenthesis where they might be able to reduce. So, okay, this is my final answer then. So let's keep going because I get that this is kind of tricky. Can I factor this top part? No. Can I factor the bottom left? Yes. I can take out a 2, leaving me with x minus 1. Then I have subtraction. What can I do up here? I can take out a negative sign because they both have one, leaving me with 2x plus 1. And then what's helpful about that is that this will cancel and turn into adding. And then on the bottom, I can factor that into whatever makes 3 in a way that adds up to 4, which is going to be a 1 and a 3. But to get a negative 4, I'll need both to be negative. So really factoring is just such an important piece of this that if you're stuck at the factoring part, you're going to kind of just be stuck. Now we're going to get a big fat line. And we're going to start collecting the things on the bottom. So this guy needs a 2. This needs an x minus 1, but they already have that in common. So I just write it once because that's already something they have in common. But then this one needs also an x minus 3. So the common denominator is all the pieces that it takes to incorporate the old bottoms. So let's look at this first one. The x plus 2 that we had on the top was already over the 2, and it was already over the x minus 1, but it's missing the x minus 3, so that's what that part of the top gets multiplied by. Then I have the plus, then I have my 2x plus 1, and if you look at this part, the 2x plus 1 is already over the x minus 3, already over the x minus 1, so the only thing it's missing is the 2, so I have to multiply the top by 2 as well. And you can put it out in front or after, whatever makes most sense. Okay, now we're supposed to do the simplifying of the top. And this one's going to have to FOIL, and this one's going to distribute. So all these skills you've been learning are kind of essential. Like you have to know how to FOIL, you have to know how to factor, you have to know how to distribute, combine, all that stuff. So it's putting a lot of things together. So I'm going to FOIL that first part. X squared, outside is 3x, inside is 2x. 2 times negative 3 is negative 6. So that will combine to be this. Plus, here I'm just going to distribute. So 4x plus 2. I'm just working on the top right now. I'm ignoring the bottom because it's just going to stay the same. And then I'm going to combine the like terms. So I'm FOILing, distributing, and combining. I have an x squared, this negative x, and this positive 4 becomes a 3x. And then minus 6 plus 2 is going to be a negative 4. And then that's over the bottom because I really haven't done anything with the bottom. And then I'm going to check to see if this top factors again. So I'm looking for 4 in a way that subtracts to be 3. So that would be 4 times 1. And in order to get a positive 3, I'll need a positive 4 minus 1. So I'm going, this one has every single step in my list. Let's shrink this down. So I had to factor the tops and bottoms right here. I had to create a common denominator right here and adjust my numerators right there. Then I had to simplify by FOILing, which I had to do, distribute, which I had to do, and then combining. And then right now I'm checking to see if my answer reduces by factoring the top again and seeing that they share an x minus 1. So when this massive problem is done, I have x plus 4 on the top, a 2, and an x minus 3 on the bottom. So this is like real math with real thinking. Big brain day for sure. Let's try again. There's only 3 of these because they do take quite some time. So this does not factor, so that's going to stay x plus 1. This probably does. I need 4 in a way that adds up to be 4. So I'm going to use 2 and 2. And for it to be a positive 4, I'll need them both to be pluses. Okay, then here I have 6 over. This is the difference of 2 squares because this is the square of x and this is the square of 2. So I'm going to have x plus 2, x minus 2. So that was the first step. I factored the tops and the bottoms. And then nothing reduces, meaning when I look at just this first part, nothing cancels, and here nothing cancels within. So now I have to do the common denominator part. And this one's a little bit confusing, but I'm going to be looking here and I say, okay, they already have one x plus 2 in common, but this guy needs another one, and this guy needs an x minus 2. So one of them overlapped, but then you have to get the other pieces as well. Now let's adjust the tops. This x plus 1 in the first fraction was already over the two x plus 2's, so it's going to need an x minus 2. So if you're going to do that to the bottom, you have to do that to adjust the top. Then I have my subtraction and my 6. But when I look at 6, that's the second fraction, it was already over an x plus 2 and an x minus 2. So it needs that other x plus 2. And that's what's going to end up getting multiplied on the top to adjust that. So we did the factoring up here. Then we created a common denominator, adjusted our tops. Now it's time to simplify the top. This is going to require FOIL. This is going to require distributing, and then we'll combine like terms. FOILing is going to be up first, outside, inside, last, and then distributing. And if you want to, you can go ahead and change that to minus x minus 2 because these two combine. Here I'm going to distribute my minus 6x and then minus 12 because the negative 6 gets distributed. All this work is still just on the top. I'm ignoring the bottom because it won't change until the end if it changes at all. So this boils down to x squared, and then minus 1 minus 6 more is a minus 7x. Minus 2 minus 12 is a minus 14. Now if I was going to factor this, I would need 14 in a way that subtracts to be 7. And my options for 14 are 1 and 14 and 2 and 7. Neither one of them will subtract to be 7, so it actually doesn't factor. And all I have to do to be done is bring down that old common denominator. So all this work that you're doing, simplifying, FOILing, distributing, all that stuff is just on the top, not the bottom. Okay, last one. So just try to think of it as a process. Like the first thing I do is factor. Can't factor this, but this has a GCF of 3, so I pull that out. And obviously the better you are at factoring, the easier this all is. So I pull out a 2 here because that has a GCF. And here, I'm trying to think of ways that would make 55 that subtract to be 6. And if you look at your blue card, you're going to have an 11 times 5. And that will indeed subtract to be 6. And you'll get a positive 6 as long as the 11 is positive and the 5 is negative. So looking at my first fraction, nothing cancels. And in my second fraction, nothing cancels. So I'm going to go ahead and go to my next step and get a common denominator. This guy needs a 3. They share an x minus 5. They already have that in common, so I only have to write it once. But then this guy needs an x plus 11. Okay, now let's cruise through and adjust the tops. This x over here was already over the 3 and the x minus 5, so it's going to need an x plus 1 on the bottom, which means I'm going to adjust the top with an x plus 1. Then I have my plus sign. I've got my 2 and my x plus 1 that were already up there. Now, if I look at this second part, that was already over the x minus 5, and it was already over the x plus 11. Oops, this should have been an 11. Sorry, I can't read my own writing. And then, so let me go back. So in this one, this is already over the x minus 5 and the x plus 11, but it's missing the 3. So I'd have to adjust the bottom by 3, and that will require me to adjust the top by 3. So this gets multiplied by a 3. So when I go to do the top, I'm going to get x squared when I distribute this plus 11x plus this 3 and this 2 make a 6, which gets distributed to this part as 6x plus 6. That, and I'm just working on the top again, that turns into x squared plus 17x plus 6 because of this. And then I'm looking to see if this will factor anymore. And I would need 6, which is 1 and 6, or 2 and 3, in a way that adds up to 17, but neither of these does. So that does not factor. And I just bring down my common denominator. So that, like, this process, honestly, is really challenging because it takes so many skills that you've already learned. And if you aren't good at them, or you haven't practiced them, or you thought they were gone and you didn't need to know them, they're kind of sneaky back on you. You got to be able to factor. So you got to be able to cancel. Then you got to be able to FOIL, and you got to be able to redistribute and combine like terms. There's a lot of steps to keep track of. But if you go to each one and kind of do the same steps and keep your notes handy to follow through, hopefully you can get from the beginning to the end. And then you can celebrate how big your brain is. Thanks, guys.